How are your holidays, Ash?
Yeah, too bad. Feels like it was yesterday we were signing off for the year. It's gone very fast. I am busy locking in meetings for London. I am flying out next Saturday. So, yeah, just trying to book into meetings. I'm catching up with Elizabeth Barley.
Great.
I've reached Chris Milligan. Yeah, so it will be good to try to connect with a few of them in real life. I think it'll be good to get outside the Aussie bubble and refresh my outlook.
The Aussie bubble. Well, you're off to London, and we're swiftly trying to get ready for New York and San Fran in March. So I think that'll come together with hours to spare.
Morning.
Here's Aaron.
Finally made it.
You're very quiet.
Oh, hang on.
Okay, you fixed it.
Is that better?
Only that it sounds like you're at Australia Zoo in a bird aviary.
I'm having to do this from the balcony, so
The birds are louder than you.
yeah, right.
How does that work?
I was going to make a comment, but anyway, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
Do I need to adjust my gain, or are we good?
We've kicked off 2026 in professional style.
Didn't expect anything less.
What happened to the renos? I thought you're getting a new office.
Yeah, well, the office is built, but now I need to plaster, and it turns out I really suck at plastering. So now I think I'm going to clad the walls. I think I've got something in mind.
Have you thought of Airtasker?
Yeah, I was on
Rather
there
than
yesterday.
plastering, why don't you just get the VJ sheets?
Yeah, so I did that for one room. That's all right. But I think in the office, just on the back wall, I'm just going to get the timber slat panels and make it look classy.
The veneer of class.
Exactly. Yeah, so hopefully be in the office next week.
Nice. What did you get up to, Jack, on holidays?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just trying to wrangle Louis. So I was up at 5 a.m. every day.
We shouldn't call it holidays with kids that young. It should be time away from income-producing activities.
Yeah, 100%. It was good. It was good not to look at a laptop screen for 2 weeks. But it definitely wasn't a holiday. And I was actually looking forward to coming back and doing work.
Well, shall we get... It's always difficult to work out what should be the first thing to discuss coming back. But yesterday in my LinkedIn feed, Vu Tran popped up with an article in Capital Brief. So I figured we could start off there. Now, we're not B2C investors, and this is a fairly B2C article, but it's in Capital Brief, why patients and technology may do what the health system can't. Health may never fund prevention properly. So this was an article that Vu wrote himself that they published. Public health may never fund prevention properly, but technology and consumer curiosity could drive a new era of proactive, personalised healthcare. Here's the hard truth. Public health systems will likely never adequately fund preventative care, even though financial and economic analysis shows that it can be an obvious win. Thought that was just relevant, and there's a segue into this after, but I don't think it's just a problem for B2C. In B2B as well, when you are trying to deliver something that's based on some separate modeling to say, hey, you spend this money now and you'll get a saving in the future, products that need that in their early sales cycle, I find are very difficult. And often I've seen situations where you can save a customer millions, but they never seem to be able to find the hundreds of thousands that they need to actually invest in that. And then the business falls flat. And for me, what we find is that you've actually got to skip the customer that is getting indirect value from it and find that end customer that's actually getting a direct value from it. And so whilst Vu's talking about sort of a B2C public health system, I think that problem is very big still in B2B.
I totally agree with that. I remember a founder, I can't remember what they were working on, but they had a solution that had a really high CapEx upfront cost, but the ROI was good, but companies simply didn't have the capital to deploy that cash upfront. And so then their ICP had to be tightened to those that had a balance sheet that would support the acquisition of it. So, yeah, I see this play out in B2B. I think especially when we look at some of the software wrapped in plastic, like the hardware plays, where there is that CapEx component, if they don't have a pure HaaS model, these sorts of issues can come up.
Yeah, because what Vu continues on in the article, he says, the problem is finding the money. Without a significant increase in total funding, any new spending would have to be taken out of hospitals and acute care, which is not viable. Ultimately, acute care will continue to dominate health budgets. Because of this, preventative care must increasingly be driven by consumers who value it and are willing to pay for it. And you could take out the word hospitals and acute care, and you could put in, the operations team or the IT team or whatever else. They've got a budget that tends to be constrained and turning off things to go and find money for risky potential future savings. And it's also often because if it doesn't work, that person's probably going to get fired. So why would you take the personal risk as well?
And I think that risk word is an important point in the public sector. Like, governments in Australia never get rewarded for taking risks on, in this case, like maybe new technologies that might lead to outcomes. But I think, it does beg the question, what is the role of government as well?
This is probably a tenuous segue, but I think this whole direct to consumer is really interesting. And I think some AI technology is going to help accelerate that. And it was Jason Lemkin in one of the last episodes of 20VC talked about how Replit had improved so much, but a lot of people weren't using vibe coding tools anymore because they disappointed them 9 months ago. And he was talking about just how different they've become. And I thought I might demo to you what I've been tapping away at with the health hubs. We're going to build a platform where the health hubs customers can come in. And so this is our little thing to be environment. And they can come in and book services at the various different locations, whether that's the equipment like HOCAT, red light, hyperbaric, saunas, whatever else, IV therapies, which are becoming very popular. We can shove a needle into your arm and pump you full of all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. And then we've got our doctors here where you can go in and engage with them either remote or face-to-face. And that then moves their clinical environment in here as well. So you can track all of your results. But what we're also doing is adding this daily wellness function. So you can actually go in and integrate your watch and your smartphone and whatever else, where you can go and track your workouts, track your nutrition, sleep metrics, and then your doctor and physio and anybody else you're working with can then see all of this information in this one-stop place. You can put in your vitamins, your supplements, but you can also then go and set other goals inside the platform that allows a bit more of a holistic sort of approach. And if you're into the woo-woo stuff, which I am a little bit of, your mind and your mindfulness having an effect on your health, we've built in this little function around mindfulness and checking in and how you're feeling at different points in time and being able to correlate that to your diet and correlate that to your exercise. And accountability can often be a big issue. So have added the ability to add accountability partners that may not be professional doctors to come in and, work with you and make sure you went to the gym and all of that. So trying to make it relevant to Vu's article, the consumers, not governments, will shape the future of preventative care. I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's partly because private businesses like the health hubs, the family office is creating, or companies like Everlab, who we've given a shout out to before, they can just build stuff far better and far faster and go straight to the end consumer. They can bypass the government. They can bypass the bureaucracy. And the end consumer can be the real driver of user-driven content that really engages them and makes them like a key part of driving the outcomes they want. Now, bringing it to sort of the B2B world, I think you can still extrapolate it to the B2B world as well, where you're going to be able to bypass the big head office bureaucracies of these large organizations and create tools and systems that really get into the hand far more cost effectively and easily to that end user inside a business. And of course, it's not going to be all beer and skittles and become easier, because as the data security issues get resolved and more of these tools can deal with that, I think there's going to be a lot more companies that have the sophistication and the creative people inside their organizations that are going to just build their own tools, and they're going to freeze out traditional software providers. And now, okay, that's going to take a little while, but I think that's the natural progression for these things. So anyway, that's what was built over a couple of weeks on holidays, where I've been able to get this MVP into the hands of the GM, some trusted users. They're making updates, doing fixes, new features. It's just a bit of a call to action to those listeners that if a simpleton like me can get the ball running and get it into the hands of users and get them to start testing it, you can too.
I'm partly taking your word for this, Dom, that it's improved, but also seeing a number of posts from others. Like Dan Norris shared some stuff he's been building, and I'm keen to dive back into it. Like we were chatting during the week, I can see use cases for this, just even in just plugging in all your back end, like into doing all that integration, and then just being able to use prompts to actually get it to do like work in the database, for example, and updating your schema and other things. Like to have a prompt that can do that for you. But exciting where this is going. And then it led into all those convos we had done around, what is the impact of this on the developer community and the demand for professional services.
Well, Ash, you introduced me to Alan, a developer, because it's all well and good to do this in here, but then you've got to make it live. And one of the questions we've been asking on the podcast is all of this tooling going to increase demand for developers, or are developers fucked? And at least in that use case, as I said to Alan, it's validated that developers are going to become more in demand, because we're still going to need to have the technical nous to make the back end, the security, all of those things come together until that's all automated. And I think we're away from that. But we're now contemplating multiple resources in a development team to start bringing some of these things to life. But for listeners that aren't playing with these tools, whether you're a founder or an investor or just someone in the ecosystem, I would really recommend that you start engaging and start practicing and start building, because the future is here. Can I show you what I've built for Tribe?
Yeah, I'm waiting. I want to see it.
I have like so many comments in this that I'm waiting for Jack.
What do you mean?
Jack, you go first.
You have to have like something to say on this, Jack, surely.
No, it blew me away, because I also saw Dan Norris's post, and I think last year when we tried Replit, I don't know what I did, but like I wasn't doing it right. And then this time around, it actually blew me away, because it's like sort of first time using it right. And I was like, whoa. But my thoughts are like, because I was doing it all on a free account, I was looking at the paid stuff, and yeah, like it blew me away there. Don't know where it starts and where it stops. Like, I know there's the whole security piece, Ash, and I know you're going to speak to this, but like, right now, if you're just doing a landing page, can you fully deploy that through Replit? And that costs zero, like $40, whatever it is for the monthly subscription. But like, that's incredible to me, because I look at the no code stuff and the user experience is just totally different.
Yeah. I think the user experience is totally different. I think the thing that is obvious to me is when something's built in one of these low code or no code tools. Like you go onto a website, you go onto a UI, and it's like, oh yeah, like, so did you use Lovable, Replit, B0, name your tool? So I think developers will only be increasing in their demand. And then I think UX UI designers, the ones that put their hands up and lean in, are going to have an incredible 5-year period where having true creative design and UI influence in a way where you can manipulate these tools to get to that end product faster, it's going to be incredible to watch. But I do think, yes, there's the security angle. Second, I'm sure Don Allen would have mentioned, most coders would just say, yeah, great, thanks for communicating what you want. I'm now going to rebuild it from scratch.
And we'll get to that bit, because I think I'm trying to work out, is that required or is that snobbery?
There's lots of different opinions. I I do agree that everyone needs to be playing. I don't know if you've listened to Lenny's podcast with Jason Don. It was released on the 2nd of Jan. If you haven't, go and listen to that. He replaced his sales team with 20 AI agents. And he makes some very interesting comments in there. I won't ruin it for people who want to listen to it, but some of the key takeaways were, for me, don't try and build everything from scratch. Utilize agencies and technology partners to come in and build it. They'll get it done faster. But you, as the founder, as the head of sales, the GTM, you need to be heavily involved in the designing and build process, one from a learning capability perspective, but also from a process redesign perspective. So yeah, and Aaron, I think like a lot of the stuff with Tribe, I think you'd be blown away that you don't need a Replit. You can actually do a lot of, hey, like tell me X, Y, and Z about our database in Airtable now. Like Airtable's AI is not the best, but it is improving. And so I think it's also just thinking about, do I actually need to add on another layer of tech, or am I just leaning into hype when I could actually just leverage the tech that I already have if I think about the avenues to get insights versus X, Y, and Z edition? I think there's this SaaS era domino effect of everyone still thinks you need to like add another tool to do something, whereas AI is actually the flattening of your tech stack.
I totally agree with that. And one of the things I really wanted to do was put the portfolio support stuff into Notion, but Notion, I don't believe, can handle what it is that I want. But when I demonstrate what I've built here, Ash, you can then tell me whether I just don't understand Notion properly.
Yeah, I'm going to very much challenge that. So let's go.
I want to pick up on that thing around the UI, UX. And so I totally agree, Ash. Like you can pretty much pick straight away the apps and websites that have been built out of one of these tools. And I do see in the very short term a need for the UX UI piece if you want to differentiate, if that actually matters for your customers. But I also think that will eventually be built into these platforms, obviously. And so I see that kind of eroding away. And I also think it's temporal in the sense that I still believe that we will head towards prompts and voice as the primary interaction tool rather than a website or even an app. And so I think, yeah, you said 5 years. I think that's probably a realistic time frame, I think, for that as well. Like I can see it heading where we don't even have an interface. Like the concept of a UI is redundant. But I'm so keen to see this, Don. I'm waiting with anticipation.
So am I, because the fucking Replit server doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to. So just sitting there thinking, just give me, okay, I'll hit stop. All right. So I can't seem to be able to get back to the homepage. But anyway, you log in as a user. So this is if you're a company. Companies will be asked to submit a report in here, and keeping it very simple, right? And I've set it up that there are SaaS companies, SaaS plus hardware companies only, marketplace companies. So because the problem is your metrics change, but the broad thing is that it's easy, and there's a little zero implementation if you want to use that as well. But you get your metrics, you put some text in, which I've added the ability for just to do it via voice if you want to, and upload any files. And so they will then submit their reports. But once we have the portfolio doing it and we make it as easy as possible for the portfolio, they will then start to get this benchmarking data. Where do they sit in the portfolio for growth and revenue per staff and growth margin and burn rates and customers and all sorts of different bits and pieces, right? And then in time, open it up so others in the ecosystem could then benchmark themselves on where different things are at. And so the workflow then, because it's constantly a bit of a problem on the Tribe side, is that when we have the information coming from the portfolios on the Tribe side, I then add my commentary, of which the next step is to add some AI, because as I'll show you, the portfolio support work is then going to be done in here. So then the AI can populate a lot of the stuff. So all I've got to do is go in there and say, yeah, no, I want to change that, or I want that to be different. And so from a workflow point of view, Portfolio hopefully is finding it a lot easier to report with some integrations. They're getting some value from their reporting. And then from our side, it's a lot easier to do the portfolio reporting. Now, we'll then have our own dashboard of our companies and what the total portfolio is doing, and portfolio alerts, and break it up into different portfolio types, and who are the top performers and who needs some attention, and all that kind of interesting jazz. Now, for my portfolio support work, it follows a methodology and it follows a process. And that's what this button here is for, called the participative side. It's the POC. And so what happens is each month we are constantly trying to find potential improvement points. We call them PIPs. And we add new potential improvement points from the companies. We put them into a pattern where there can be multiple things saying the same things, and then we prioritize them. Now, that all sounds very easy. The challenge often is there's a lot of conflict around what should be prioritized, when things should be done, who should be on these working groups. And I won't go into it because there's a bit of IP that we do want to keep in here, but we've spoken about before on the podcast about this concept of CAPI, CAPI, coalescing authority, power, and influence, because that's often where implementation of all of these things turns to shit, because we don't actually have the right people in decision making. Then there's a whole process of how to make a decision that turns into an implementation plan, which is in here, because if you don't do that correctly, it's then very hard to hold people accountable in implementation. And that's often what we're really trying to lift here, is taking from a founder-led organization where a founder is at the center pushing and driving everything, and helping that transition where you can start to decentralize accountability. But if you just delegate without the right systems, process, controls, that's actually abdication, and abdication leads to a lot of screw-ups. So what we're trying to do is provide some systemic ways for that first phase of decentralization and delegation. And when you have a platform, when you have a system you can follow, and everything we do is a function of the life cycle, and that's another area where investors and founders sometimes trip themselves up, because not all problems are a problem for today. Some problems are normal, some problems are abnormal, and some problems are fatal. But you actually need to look at it in the context of the life cycle. And so there's a filtering system in here that helps give some life cycle context. There still is the democracy aspect, and we've spoken about that before. There's democracy in decision-making, dictatorship, and implementation. And so the democracy side, we still want to understand where people's energy is for what they believe is a priority. And so there's like a simple voting function, but ultimately we don't subscribe to anarchy and consensus. Just because people get to have their say doesn't mean they get to have their way. And ultimately, a lot of this stuff is just trying to make sure that the person who holds authority for the final decision is making a decision that has a really clear implementation plan that is more than likely to get implemented. We tend to find founders don't suffer from too many shit ideas or bad decisions. We find actually the decisions are pretty good. What gets in the way is implementation. So a lot of this stuff is geared towards implementation, even though traditional education, university, like, can you think of a course for implementation? Like, people go to uni and do MBAs and it's all about strategy and marketing, and it's very rare that you see something actually concentrating on implementation and actually getting things done in the real world. And that's where we like to play. Now, anyway, that's just identifying, prioritizing, actually creating a plan that's ready to implement. That's only half of the story. Those plans need to be turned into projects and their subtasks. So I've then added a simple project and task function that once you've agreed to all of these things, and that's where 80% of the work is, there's a simple environment here that they can keep track of it. And the next phase of this, it'll just be templates that match whatever system they have, whether it's Asana or Monday or whatever it might be. So then that way it can just be imported if they are using an external system. But you would be surprised, or maybe not surprised, but companies and founders that have raised millions and sometimes tens of millions of dollars, they don't actually have very good task management, project management, accountability. They try to, they start, it becomes a bit sporadic and it falls down. And so actually being able to provide for a certain part of their business, and this, they'll outgrow this hopefully very quickly. Like, this is really quite basic. The goal isn't that they're going to be a billion-dollar company running off this, but most companies start life on email, on spreadsheet, on a bit of paper. Then they try and migrate into Asana or Monday or Notion, and it all becomes a little bit whatever. Whereas with somebody like me that's supporting them, we actually have an environment. And then the benefit is the investor reporting becomes a little easier, because there'll be a little AI that's running over the top that can help update the investor reporting of what the hell have we done in the last 3 months. And then they can just manage their team members. And so Tribe has to find new deals. We have to support new deals, but then a core part of what we do is missions. And so then having the mission dashboard for people, where actually the schedule is all in here, the ability to see who they're meeting and having all of the contacts so they can then make notes, they can store stuff. Because one of the problems with missions is you forget who you met, where you met, you forget where the activity was. And so if you go to a, US entry 101, you can add your notes there. I've started a little Slack integration so we can then have sort of like chat, either use Slack or use here, but then it integrates. But again, you've got a reason to come back. And if you want to have some task management stuff, well, you can then add that into there as well. And so instead of having a website and a PDF and a different thing to go and do, you just keep it all in here, which then means we keep our resource center in here as well. And so having the spot where we keep all of our stuff with to do strategy, go to market, lead gen, CRM, sales process, whatever it might be, in a central kind of thing. And then underneath it is all the administration of it, right? So yes, there's our dashboard, our portfolio reporting, but then being able to administrate our companies, administrate our resources, administrate the missions. It's it's the beginning of a little one-stop shop. So that was my holidays.
I love it. I expect that mission app. I've been thinking about this over our Replit combos this week. Like, that is so needed. But my only question with all of that is, do we have this one universal thing, or are they separated in some way? But I love it. I love the visibility that we could have through that on the pips. Have you pitched this to Ishak? Like, has Adizi's ever solved this with an application interface?
Yeah. They built a massive one, but it's too big. It's too complicated. It's a whole. It's just too hard. Whereas this isn't about trying to solve for a company's needs forever, but where we play at Series A, sort of pre-Series A, you're in that early start of systemization where the company has to start to pull its socks up and it needs to start to get some rhythms. And we just really want to be that first point. And for some companies that are hardcore in manufacturing, they're going to end up in one particular type of systems environment. For somebody that's always, say, going to be in pure play SaaS, they'll probably end somewhere else where they're to prime the pump. But you would be surprised behind the scenes, or maybe not, early stage companies don't get born with this stuff.
Right, Don, how many hours do you think this took? And how much did it cost? Because Replit, it's variable pricing, right?
Yeah, the expensive bit on the other app was when I integrated OpenAI into it and created a little agent that could start doing stuff. I have to go back and check. I think all of this here, I think when I saw the bill for this particular app, this is $55 of costs by the time I had done some upgrades. In terms of the time, it's hard to say, but over the holidays, like, I'd get up at 4, I'd jump into my little Replit thing, I'd hit it with my prompts. And then we'd go to the beach, we'd go fuck around. And then at night, I'd load it up with lots of prompts, and that would then work overnight. But I'd say if I sat down to do that beginning to end, 10 hours. And that was probably twice as inefficient as it needed to be, because I took the lazy way of prompting as I went. So as an example, because in the pip process, like I didn't create like a there's no prompt I could go and do to explain the PIT process. That IP doesn't live anywhere. The Institute has always kept that well away from the web, probably for this reason. It's all in my head. And so I had to sort of go through, okay, I want to be able to create a potential improvement point, prioritize it, and allocate these things. Oh, hang on a minute, I forgot about patterning. Shit, okay, so go back and do a new prompt. Oh, hang on a minute, I forgot the fact that people have to be able to rate their ones. And so if I'd sat down and done the prompt properly, maybe I could have done it faster. But shit, for something like this, what's the difference between 10 hours and 20 hours? It's nothing.
I'm waiting for Ash's comments.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Ash.
No, I think this is it's a great start, Don. I think this is your builder mentality, right? Like you want everyone inside your organization building. I think that any founder, we all probably get carried away by how much we want in a single platform and how many integrations and how much data and how many patterning and all of those things. So I think if we were going to take this and then put it into production, it would be your very traditional project management questions that we'd need to ask. Is this actually a pain point we're solving for? Look, my biggest hesitation is Jack finds it hard to get our portcos sometimes to respond to an email with information, let alone sign into a platform. I understand that we're like trying to incentivize with portfolio metrics and make the reporting somewhat valuable, but I think we'd have to, really think about the return on investment of actually having the portcos do this. But I think that the overall thinking is great, and just playing with these tools is awesome. I'd say from a process perspective, I would recommend not going straight into Replit and actually doing some thinking time with your LLM of choice to actually break down your thinking, what you're looking to build, go away, come back before you go in. Because I find that when you're prompting and you're trying to add small changes and small changes and small changes, that's actually when the code base gets really confused. And that's when I find you run into more issues with Replit or V0, and I end up half the time starting again. So if you go away and you actually do your thinking, you're like, right, now we're going to think about the investor updates, and you use monologue or Whisperflow and you do a brain dump, and then you ask it to help you refine it. And then you go on to the next section and the next section. And then you say, right, now I want to go and build an MVP of this in Replit. Help me write a series of prompts in order for it to build this, break it down into bite-sized pieces so it doesn't run into any limitations, and go forward that way. That would be like my one feedback for doing this again.
Yeah, I think it's an iterative process where, as long as you break it down into its component parts, which the next article I saw was Jeff McQueen, who we've had Jeff involved in a number of the missions. Really good Aussie founder that really helps founders based in San Fran. But he did a post, I built my product with AI in 90 days and then burned the code base to the ground. The first version of TeamScore came together super fast. I mostly vibe coded it. Within a few weeks, I had enough of a working model to prove the product was useful. That's the first step. Why I really like this Replit stuff is half the time, 90% of the time, founders build shit that nobody wants. And so to be able to actually have a viable MVP that actually works. So with the Health Hub one, I've already given that to the GM, and her and 4 of our clients are already playing with the functionality. So they're in there, they're playing. And so with our portfolio at the moment, the whole PIP and prioritization and task management stuff, we've got 3 of the portfolio that are in full swing. So in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be in here using this and giving feedback and testing. But I think it's on the basis that, yes, this code base would be quite messy, because literally to create a function, I've probably prompted it 10 times. But once you've got the function working, then we'll go again. We'll learn what they want. We'll redo it more efficiently. But then what Jeff says in this article, building tech with tools like Replit and Lovable is almost too easy. You get a prototype fast. The trap right now is in the AI build hype. Vibe coding is brilliant takeoff, but then when you get some altitude, the risk of disaster is too high. I think the risk of disaster is too high if people don't just accept the fact that these are really good tools to get MVPs out at the moment. But then you need to go and have a professional approach. And whether that is giving effectively this to the developer, a full stack developer, and saying, okay, this is just a UI, follow it, or whether you can actually take some of the code and run with it. I'm not technically knowledgeable enough, but I think as long as people build in the fact that whatever time you spent on the MVP, you've probably got to spend 10, 20, 30 times, maybe more, on building out the full one. But at least you're now building a full one, hopefully, that on features that customers actually give a fuck about. And I think that's the sequence. And Jeff in this post said, speed gets you a demo, but not a quality product. 100%. But too often people try and build a quality product for stuff that nobody cares.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Jeff on this. And also doubling down a shout out to Jeff, like awesome human, awesome Aussie over in the US. But like, I'm hoping that this is stating the obvious for founders. Like, I don't see this as anything new, but it's fast tracking it. Like, I think founders building a rapid prototype to get in front of customers, to get feedback. Yes, you're absolutely accumulating tech debt without a doubt. And eventually you will need to rebuild. I think that has been the common playbook. I think what is enabled now is to run these experiments much faster and to run more experiments you wouldn't otherwise have run.
But on the tech deck piece, when you actually watch Replit now compared to 9 months ago, they've got all these sub-agents like architects, the user tester, and the amount of time it then spends actually clearing out the code base and then rebuilding it based on your new prompts. It is actually getting a lot more efficient at that. Whereas before it would take it and spit it out, and then it would build code upon code. It seems to be based on where you're landing, clearing out the old code and then starting again. And I have a feeling as time goes on, the developers will throw out less and less of this code, but the key isn't to wait until it's perfect. The key is to get on the train early, so you're sort of at the front edge.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I agree. I see Replit will eventually solve where long-term shifting something to production as a scalable product that's got all the elements you need without the tech debt. I can see that occurring.
And Nash, I think you're right. We've got to make sure that we take a customer-centric approach to it. And with a lot of the companies, they're very busy. I guess my view on it is, worst case scenario is we take the emails they then send us and we put it in ourselves. We just put it into the front end. But then we've got a reporting tool process. And then as Tribe gets larger, as our fund gets closed, we are going to get to a point where actually we're going to be writing checks that if you want our dollars, it comes with certain requirements. Now, the good news is we've spent X period of time testing and building and trying to create something that is as easy as possible. And for like these 15 metrics, we can pull them straight out of Xero or Mile or whatever. So you don't even have to worry about that. So the CFO's only going to do these two minor things. And we've added like a AI voice tool where it will just talk to you and ask you how the quarter's been, and then that'll populate. And so to begin with, we can just do it ourselves. And I still think it would be easier than what we're doing at the moment. And then as we grow, we're growing into something that hopefully founders go, actually, I quite like doing my Tribe reports because every quarter I get to see where I'm sitting against others. I get to access this other information. It already half populates the data for me. Like, yeah, it's working towards that rather than, I guess, trying to get perfection.
Yep, totally agree. Just security. So, well,
the guy that you've, Alan, who you've recommended, that's a key item there. And from a selfish point of view, often these processes fall down because I just have too much stuff on my plate. But being able to give them tools where I can hand accountability to them earlier and say, you just have to follow this bouncing ball. And look, if you outgrow this, that's fucking fantastic. You don't have to use it forever, but hopefully there's just starts.
What I want to know is, have you been using Whisperflow?
I have been using Whisperflow.
And have you been using it for these prompts?
No, fuck.
You've been sitting there typing like an idiot.
No, listen.
I've got a point of view on this. think
when
the
it's 4 o'clock in the morning and the family is sleeping, I ain't saying a word.
We're in the office. It's a whole separate entity.
No. I've been down at the beach, sitting in the living room with everyone around. There's no talking there, and I'm still trying to get my head around the whole granola. Make a phone call from granola, so it then records them. That
Yeah.
I haven't fully mastered yet.
Okay.
But I'm
Yeah.
also of the point of view, I don't think we should naturally default to going to AI for the answer to everything. I actually think practicing
No,
our
Aaron,
own.
Oh, you're a
Just
boomer.
You don't
Boomer.
have
Yeah.
to.
No,
This-
but actually practicing our own and developing the intellectual muscle to actually create something independent.
Aaron, Whisper Flow is literally just instead of typing your prompts, Don is just like clicking and it like transcribes it because like the speed.
Hey
to
Siri,
get-
open Whisperflow. Please send Ash a message. You're crimping my style.
Sorry, Whisperflow hasn't added support for that with Siri.
Whisper doesn't integrate with Siri. There you go.
Well, it probably will once Apple integrates with Google, which is an awesome play.
But you are right. I was on a meeting yesterday, Ash, with one of the property managers, and I'm sitting there going, "This is amateur hour." For a start, nobody's hit record. Secondly, they haven't recorded in Granola, and they're sitting there typing out notes like a half a chromosome from the chimpanzee.
Oh, and like now when I have to like type, I'm like, oh, this took 3 times as long as it should have. Like, this is so annoying. Like, I've currently got Claude Code running, Notion AI running, GPT running.
Yeah, but I listen to that and say, we need some help.
Yeah, I get nervous about short-term memory issues. If we're not having any physical interaction, which creates the neural pathway, what is?
Don't be
is
so
our
negative,
future?
Darren.
I just
Wait, what are you saying about my memory? I've just got people working for me while I'm doing this podcast with more actual concentration than I used to. So.
But exactly, is this where we're heading, where we've outsourced all of our memory and all of our logic and rational decision making, and we just become these little puppeteers? Like,
No, I think you're getting brainwashed by negative media. I think that
this is my perspective, Ash. Like, I
think
see
the
it with
elite will
kids.
get better.
How do you define better though in that context?
Because I think like I'm having more time to actually think and be strategic and push my understanding of architecture and understanding of strategy and decision making and leadership. I'm spending more time actually thinking and having a conversation with AI about, okay, here's the situation, here's how I'm contemplating it, restructuring it. Ask me 5 questions from the perspective of X, Y, and Z. We'll tackle it this way. Now, if we think about X, Y, and Z use case, how does that work? By the way, here's 5 of my tech stack tools. How does it integrate? How do we automate my operational end of month to I can spend less time making sure that zero is reconciled and that that's flowed into my investor reporting, and more time actually interrogating things to make sure they're correct and I haven't overpaid for a tool I'm no longer using, and that I can actually be more strategic in my content that I'm putting in my investor report versus manually doing the report. So I think like it's all up to the end user of if they are going to go down the route of outsourcing and losing that mental ability. But I think this team, I don't have that concern because I actually think that we are very, very well placed to utilize this and only lift ourselves up to another layer of potential that we might not have got to in our lifetime without this technology, because we're all extremely busy people. So I do think it is a headset. And so I do think that, yes, that will happen to a certain percentage of the population. I have no doubt. But I'm not worried about you, and I'm not worried about Maren, and I'm not worried about your kids, because you bring them up in a world where you want them to be inquisitive. You make them ask really good questions. You have conversations at the dinner table. The people who will win in this world, in my view, is people who are persistent, are agile, and ask awesome questions. Like, that's what's going to win in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with everything you said there. My concern isn't this team. My concern is maybe humanity.
Yeah.
Like future generations born into a default where you you outsource inquisition. I think if you maintain inquisition, what you described, absolutely, I get it. It's a powerful tool, but I am nervous about
This
the
is why you have
outsourcing.
lots of brand
Yeah.
for doomsday requirement. And Don, you need to try Claude Code.
Yeah, I need to.
Well, actually, do you have the Mac subscription,
The what?
or you're just on GPT operator?
No, I think I've got the full. You're talking about OpenAI.
No, Anthropic.
Anthropic. I had it for a while. I cancelled it, but I don't think we have one.
Because the Mac subscription, they just released Codework, which is Claude Code, but more for non-technical.
So, Ash, if I only use WhisperFlow, I wouldn't be able to multitask during this podcast. So it occurred to me that now that I've built out that pip and prioritization functionality and whatever else, and added about 60 pips to it, it was a little whatever. But I just did a prompt and asked it I just said in the POC dashboard, in the POC functionality, please create a dashboard of info. So now that you first start with the dashboard, there's 54 pips, 51 of them are unassigned, 2 pads have been prioritized. Here's the categories. What are the top priority patterns as voted by the people? When's the next meeting? Recent, quick stats. And that's where some of that may not be perfect, but it's now given me something to sort of work on. And I think that's the speed and the creativity that it comes out of it. And that it's then combining the sort of like being able to combine the functionality that, like, a potential improvement point has a particular type of categorization. Again, none of this is found in an LLM or a model. And so being able to work with workflow, I think, is...
Didn't you just say you connected OpenAI to your...
Yes. So I hear so this is very basic, but with this little... Replit effectively organized the connection of OpenAI, so then I could have this chat function in here, and then we added a sort of an agent component where the user could go and book and take action through here. So it could be, you could just be in here and say, create a goal to walk 50 Ks every week.
Can't see what you're doing, Don.
Oh, can't you?
Wrong tab. We're on the tribe one.
Still on the tribe one. Anyway, like it, let me... And so adding in the AI integration that is both sort of chatbot looking at your data, but also agent taking action. So then that way you could sort of go and add a goal. You could book a service. You could ask it for insights about your mood. The fact that I was at least able to get the basics of that without a developer skill is quite impressive. Now, when Alan takes things and runs with it, I got no doubt he's going to be able to supercharge. But I guess the entrepreneurial creativity and then getting the workflow exactly the way that you want it, then into the hands of the users first, really early, is to me where the game changer is. And so by the time it gets to Alan, hopefully 90% of the workflow crap is worked out of it. And so then that way...
Yeah, 100%. And I think like this is just, ideas have always been cheap. Now MVPs are cheap, right? So it enables entrepreneurs who wouldn't have had that technical background to get to market. And hopefully by the time they're engaging with a developer, they have customers who are ready to pay. I think it just changes the unit economics of starting a business out, which is amazing.
Yeah, starting a business and then adding features within that business. And and again, a commodity product subject to competition with no switching costs, the marginal profit often goes to zero. If you have that in the back of your head, like especially on the wellness app, all right, how do we then create switching costs? Because what is being built here is really commoditized. I build this MVP for a few $100,000. Probably it's going to turn into something more live. But how do we make sure that we've got switching costs and some network effects? Well, if you are constantly connecting your accountability partners, your family, your partner into your goals, if you connect your team in, there becomes a switching cost that if you want to leave this platform, no problem, but you leave all of your user-generated content behind, you leave all of that behind. And then from a network effect point of view, just every little opportunity to invite or share or connect. And so those 7 powers, so to speak, still live behind for someone wanting to create a sustainable competitive advantage, and that then sees the technology as just a commodity. And that's where a lot of people, I think, are setting themselves up for failure, thinking, I'm going to build technology that is my competitive advantage. Wrong. And with people that have invested millions, if not tens of millions, have a look at a Culture Amp in platform, that when we've said before SaaS is dead, it's not dead in the context that there isn't going to be SaaS. I think there's going to be a fuckload more SaaS. It's just that if you think a big code base and a lot of investment is going to be your differentiated factor, imagine what I could do with Whisperflow. And this was just with a monkey typing into a keyboard. What else you got, Jack?
Look, Jack's going to be on Whisperflow. I was on the bus yesterday on the way, just like jamming out with monologue.
Sitting there talking to yourself.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I've got my headphones on. People might think I'm on the phone. I'm actually just talking to my computer, sitting on my lap.
Okay, but that makes sense. There are some generational constraints. So what you think is normal,
it's normal. I just like fully embrace that. Like that is an hour of time that should be useful. Yeah, totally. Every time mom comes home, I'm literally like pacing around the room, just like talking, and she's like, "What are you doing?" Well, like, I think best when movement is involved.
No, that is true. So I'll hopefully be on the I have to be on the tractor or finally fix one of my mowers. Yeah.
Yeah, driving is the time for it. Yeah.
It is actually.
Yeah. And like I have found in the past, I guess 3 weeks, like I've been doing like a lot of ABC testing where I'll give like Claude Code, Notion AI, and GPT the exact same task. And it's like fascinating to see which one's working better in some aspects. And then I'll just go, oh, I like that bit, take you from there and take that from here and that from here. And like context is king. You know, like I'm having a conversation about my Notion page going, oh, I want to completely restructure it. I want you to rebuild the entire infrastructure of our Notion from scratch again. Here's what I don't think's working. Here's the friction points. And I gave that same context. And because Notion AI could actually see all the content and the structure, it blew it out the water. Then I connected Claude Code with MCP to Notion to give it that same context to then run it again. And so I think there's like also this, like, you got to test, you got to try, you got to play.
So do you think Notion can take the POC and all the pip process I showed you before?
I mean, like task management, it does really well. It really
task is the easy bit, but it's the workflow getting to the task. The task is the final piece of the river. The task is the easy bit.
It does dashboards, but like what you showed is like a very SaaS dashboard. So it depends on if you want to use
the dashboard.
Not
the dashboard. The workflow of a team coming together, identifying all their problems, voting and prioritizing their problems, breaking their problems into component parts. Component parts then become the tasks. The tasks then become in the projects. Can all of that that I demoed be done in Notion? Because if it can...
I think so. It's a lot of databases, but I think it can.
If the user...
Just have a conversation with Notion AI, with Whisperflow, and ask it.
But the problem is, like, I tried to explain to you once before the process, and I just couldn't do it. And what this will at least allow is a visualization of exactly what I want. And what I really like about these tools is we don't then need to compromise. Like if with a Notion or an Asana or whatever else, I'm sure I could do all sorts of things, but what are all the compromises? And if there's a tool available where you don't need to compromise, and you can actually get rid of any of that inefficiency that's often where this stuff dies. That to me is exciting.
Yeah. I will say that like every additional tool obviously comes at a financial cost, but every integration between platform to platform increases cybersecurity risk. So you do have to like also think about all of those pieces of your pie.
Yeah.
And you're only as good as the weakest person in your network.
We're pretty weak.
Speak for yourself.
You're only as good as the weakest person in your
weakest
network,
person.
right? So you get dragged, you get dragged down.
You know, why I'm very cautious with what's in the drive email, what it's connected to.
Well, that took a lot longer than I thought. I'm mindful. There was a couple of other things in the schedule about NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang admits he works 7 days a week, including holidays, in a constant state of anxiety out of fear of going bankrupt. And some people think that would be a joke, but it is a feature, not a bug. This is one of the core things of, we get to work with a lot of very wealthy people. And what's interesting is there isn't a tipping point of a level of wealth and prior success where they go, you know what? I can turn off the fear thing. It's this ever-present thing that you've got to be a little bit careful of when you look at those people and what they've got. Understand they generally live in a world of anxiety, and it's not actually a pleasant life.
Yeah, and you 100% agree on this. Feature, not a bug. Like that fear drives them to make decisions that they otherwise would not make, that lead to these outcomes of, if successful, also phenomenal future wealth. But that fear doesn't go away. And we've talked about some of our shareholders and good friends who are, even with a couple of $100 million in the bank, still living in fear of bankruptcy. And logically and rationally, that doesn't appear to make sense. But for whatever reason, that fear drives them. And I always think of that, the very successful outlier entrepreneurs are both pulled towards something and running from something. And this is where I get worried. If we solve all our problems, Don, does that go away? Or can we actually maintain that?
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Vu Tran, who commented on the post where I saw, he said 100%, if it was easy, any clown would be doing it. Instead, being a founder is reserved for a select few clowns with top 0.01% pain tolerance and distorted sense of reality. High IQ and hard work are in abundance and therefore not differentiators. Founders with borderline delusion disorder crossed with a Herculean pain tolerance and a sprinkle of DEFCON 1 anxiety is the perfect mix. Good luck seeing an LLM or an AI replace these traits.
And some neurodiversity, and then you're there.
Oh, I think that's what he's describing.
The only thing I would maybe tweak on Boo's post is the sprinkle of DEFCON 1 anxiety. I think it's a bit of a flood of anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we all with anxiety every day, don't we? Like on the call, not deciding.
I've learned that there are people who don't have anxiety.
Wow.
Yeah, there are these people that are they're like happy and they've got like functional relationships and they get up in the morning and they actually recommend this journey to others. Like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and they don't need to prove themselves or address any chip on the shoulder. They're actually just zen with what they have.
They just exist and they're happy.
Yeah, I remember when I first moved back to Australia, I said to my dad, "Oh, people are like content here. That's new. Like they're just."
But people are a product of their environment. When you look at the US, there's nowhere near a strong safety net. It's a capitalistic system where if you deliver, you get rewarded. If you don't, you're pretty well fucked. And there's a high likelihood you're going to get shot in the face. So that sort of environment breeds a nervous system reaction, which then breeds certain thoughts, which then breeds certain behaviors. And culture is a big driver of that. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think of like when I grew up in Sydney, it's a very transactional community. I think Queensland and Adelaide, less so. It's more relationship based. And there's a contentment, I think, that comes from that, where you're not having to exchange value in order to extract a sense of fitting in or worth.
I'm still not. Oh, yeah, I'm not used to it, and I don't think it floats my boat. But
I think Australia, I think this is part of the reason why Aussie founders tend to exit on the smaller side, not just because of market size and other dynamics, but we don't have that need, like that cultural hunger. I think we are a bit complacent, but would you swap it? Like, would you actually change that? I don't know. My theme of the week has been the Mexican fisherman fable. Like, what are you actually solving for to ultimately just come back and be on the beach and fish?
And what's the fable?
Well, the fable is there's a Mexican on the beach and he goes out each morning to fish for a couple of hours to catch the fish to sell at the market. And an American tourist comes down and says, "Oh, you should get a boat." And why would I do that? Well, then you can go out and get more fish. And why would I do that? Well, because then you can hire staff and then you can get another boat. And why would I do that? Well, then you can get more fish. But why would I do that? And eventually the narrative is, well, then you can sell the business and just sit on the beach, fish for a few hours and spend the rest of the day with your kids. It's like, well, that's what I'm doing right now. And I think so many people are in that loop.
It's the ultimate midwit meme.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just see a lot of founders who index to, well, not just founders, but I think a lot of us are driven to achieve something, to unlock something, which ultimately we could have had all along if we just bothered to make that choice.
That's true. Well, you mentioned exits before. We'll just do one final one. There was an article in the AFR that Australian exits hit at 3.5 billion as the values rise 62%. And there's a chart there that sort of shows 2023, it sort of bottomed out. But we've been rising each year since. We're not at the peak. But the fact that exits are starting to creep back up is very important for our ecosystem, as we keep discussing, because we need those funds to recycle.
This reminds me of a conversation with Addie Pinkster in London just before Chrissy. Like, she was saying there's been a kind of rush of M&A activity, and she attributes it to a lot of capital coming out of the US that's looking for a home, a lot of PE activity that's looking outside of the US now with Trumpageddon. But she was saying, like, there's been a definite uptick in acquisitions across UK.
Yeah, well, I hope it continues, and I think there might be some M&A activity in our portfolio this year. So I'm really excited for 26, because for some of them it's been like a spring for the last few years, and I think a couple of them have come out very strong. Now, during the holidays, I had just been adding random lines to remind me in the schedule. Now, I've got no idea. I put a line that says the interview with that chick.
Oh, I know what this is. Was it 2 days ago? 3 days?
Oh, okay. That's so the interview. Okay. Yes. This is like a public service announcement. I don't even know how to start this one off. You give your view of it.
Look, we're interviewing for a role at the moment, and we shortlisted applicants for interviews. And this one particular candidate, first of all, arrived late, did send a note making it clear that she has multiple other interviews. But then,
yeah, the note was, I'm on an interview that's running late, and like there was a little thing. Fair. Oh, that's interesting, but that's fine. Like, you're looking for a job, no problem.
No problem. Even though you did actually choose the time for the call with us, but anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But then arrived on the call, we're like, hey, welcome, here we are, let's go. It's like, I'm sorry, what job is this for? What company is this? Said the company. Oh, you'll have to remind me what job that is. What's this job? And so what's the product you're selling? I'm like, it's this. It's like, look, I'm sorry, I've applied for so many roles. I actually don't know I can't remember applying for this. Can you remind me what it's all about? I'm like, okay. And then, well, the real kicker for me was when she then said, oh yeah, no, this is all coming to me now. The reason I would have applied is because I know nothing about this space and I really want to learn, because I quit my last job because it was so boring. I didn't have a chance to learn anything new.
And then,
okay.
And then when you asked Aaron about her experience in some things, and then she said, no, I've got none of that. And then you know, it was time for us to save us all some time. And you said, okay, look, we don't think it's going to work. We don't want to waste your time. And what was her response? She said, didn't you read my email? Oh, sorry. Didn't you read my resume? As if we were the fuckwits
for booking the call. Oh, like, I just don't compute. I don't get it. But anyway, it's entertaining.
But if you're going to be 10 minutes late, why not be 11 minutes late and just quickly find...
Yeah, especially when the role is for someone who has control over so much of a program delivery, relationships, like coming into things, knowing everything about what's about to happen from a logistics point of view. It just demonstrated no logistical control over self.
You missed a good one, Ash.
I'm marginally concerned about the shortlist filters, but we can take it.
But Ash, this is the world we live in, where you can run your resume through AI, generate the most awesome response for a thing. AI actually said she was the lead candidate in reviewing
She
the
did.
application. Yep.
Your mate Whisperflow, Ash, did this to us.
This is the quirk of AI.
Oh,
It screamed
that
loudly.
happens to leave the three of you alone, is it?
Well, I got to say, we've got some pretty good candidates in the mix.
Yeah. It's exciting.
So I'm very happy with how it's looking. I'm looking forward to that. And it's probably a good chance to plug the mission. So for anyone listening who wants to join us in New York and San Francisco in March, move fast, get in, reach out to us, and we can onboard you. But it's really a chance to test a market entry strategy without overcommitting and avoiding all the common mistakes, but also to understand what that looks like, the differences. And ultimately, when you come back, like past participants show, you completely build your Aussie business differently. So even if you feel now's not the time, I guarantee it absolutely is the time, because you are, like we talk about with tech debt, you're building business debt by building the business the wrong way. Build it right now, you'll scale later much better and more efficiently. So yeah, jump on, reach out if you have any questions about the missions.
Absolutely. Anything your end, Ash?
Start building, play, experiment. Don't put anything sensitive in anything.
Good advice.
I like it. Build.
Well, quickly, some charts. Remember the government decided to exponentially increase the 5% first home buyers guarantee and said it wouldn't have any impact in pricing. Well, the data is starting to come out, and it used to be above what they've taken is the $750,000 price cap, above the cap and below the cap, and it used to be above the cap was growing stronger, but now, of course, below the cap is now growing much stronger. And whilst it's not a huge percentage, the thing with percentages is they compound. And for a country that has a housing shortage and a housing crisis and high immigration creating a lot of demand, I just don't understand how politicians could be so disingenuous, because certainly in a few areas that we operate, overnight, properties under a certain level just disappeared. Investors just came in and snapped them up. Now, one of the things I have said before, and I think we're going to see it globally, especially as we de-globalize. If you look at Trump, what he's doing, dismantling everything, we're going to lose that pricing efficiency of a globalized world when we go back to our tribes and start fucking fighting each other. Is secular inflation is one of those things to keep an eye out. And somebody's taken the 1966 to 1982 secular inflation and then time shifted it, I think, by about 18 months. And it's quite amazing how the cycles play out. And if this does play out, we're actually at the beginning of a secular inflation, which, again, when you break down globalization, you break down trade, you reshore everything, and you push the cost of everything up, I think people want to get really ready for any thought that we're going back to low interest rate, low inflationary environments. I would love to see that evidence. And one of the things that does really well, obviously historically, is real assets when you get into these cyclical times. And so this chart for people at home goes back to 1925 and just looks at the ratio of real assets relative to financial assets going back to 1925. And it's very much sort of a cycle that we are at a historical low, which makes absolute sense. If you look at the S&P 500 and the financialization of the world, our financial assets just absolutely rule the roost. But will that cycle return one day? Because if it does return and we start to see it tick up, is that because real assets inflate significantly, or is it because financial assets deflate significantly? I guess that is an interesting question. But for me, I'm not saying I'm going full tinfoil hat, but when you have a look at what's happening around, I don't see a world that's going to get more and more stable with what's going on, and real assets tend to perform best. Now, I haven't had time to put the rest into the schedule, so I won't. I'll just see if there's any that are relevant just quickly. This is a chart of something really quite scary. This is Aaron with his mustache.
Bloody hell. Do you know, my kids, they're still talking about it like I should have kept it, which I'm concerned with over my parenting, clearly. But
he's that concerned about the future prospects of the fund. He's going to do some moonlighting in a tangential.
$10 is $10.
$10 is $10. So that sort of came to mind. I don't know what a lot of these others are. This is US heavy truck sales going back to 1967. Again, very cyclical. But what you'll often find is they fall off sharply just before recessionary sort of environments. This is the US, obviously. So this is going to be interesting to see if this pattern continues to play out. But just before recessionary periods, in a few times, the truck sales were ringing a bell as something falling down. Have a look at this chart. This is going back to 1960. This is the percentage of our GDP in Australia of the Australian government. And it was 18% back in the 60s, and now she's just shy of 30%. Like the spending, and have a look at it like from 2015, just what's 21 to nearly 30. And the problem is that crowds out a lot of stuff. So is that going to continue? Well, I think we've got at least another 2 terms of Labor. So we'll see. I don't know. I'll save the others for. I'll save the others for another time and spare you from them. That's a nice intro. What are we looking forward to?
2 things on my list. One is 2 more interviews today for the Accelerator Program Manager role. And the other one is our community being back in Australia and back online. Like the number of people away at the moment until the end of month. It's hard to get stuff done.
Yeah, if Japan was no longer exists as a country, we've lost half our LPs and a few founders.
Well, actually, here's one for Chris Gillings. Trying to find the correlation between Japanese ski seasons and the impact on the venture investing cycles.
Yes.
The number of people that are away.
Yes, please, Chris.
Maybe if we just need a really bad snow season in Japan.
Ash?
I am looking forward to getting Jack, hopefully the first pass on all of our investor data and portfolio data transferred over into Airtable with some fancy dashboards for him to tear to pieces.
Yeah,
like it.
I'm looking forward to that, Ash. I've got a mate's birthday tomorrow, so looking forward to catching up with a few friends.
I'm looking forward to checking into therapy and getting over my Replit addiction.
Checking into therapy. I thought you just had an annual subscription.
No, I'm looking forward to working with Alan on just better understanding this transition of and look, if all that's occurred is we've got really fast, highly effective MVP stuff, fine. That's still better than what it was. What I really want to try and understand is, like, I have a feeling it's going to be like MVP, just almost UI. Then there's like the next iteration of MVP. Your data's safe. You've got all of that sorted out, but it couldn't handle 10,000 users. You could probably handle 100 users. Okay, that's fine. That gets it into the hands. It gets used. And for the tribe one, right? Like we've got how many in the portfolio? 14. And how many mission participants a year? So that's always going to be a low volume versus the health hub that might be higher volume. But then you get users on that, and then you get your capital stack sword and say, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to raise capital. I need $2.5 million to build this properly, but I've already validated everybody loves it. And so I want to get better at understanding that. And I'm just looking forward to the next week unpacking that a little bit more, because I think it's going to help our DD on our portfolio companies a lot more as before, because we've often outsourced that and got people that we trust to explain it to us, which we'll still obviously do, but being able to sort of have more knowledge ourselves means we can hold a better conversation. So, and then I'm hopefully looking forward to the Tyler coming back next week to finish my pool, given zip zero zilch has occurred. And it's sad.
Has he been away skiing in Japan?
Probably. Anyway. All right. Well, it's good to be back, team. It's we are back.
Bloody good to be back. I'm feeling pumped for this year. Calendar's filling up pretty fast though. When I'm looking out at missions and offsite mid-year and a few other pieces, like wow, this is
a
March
lot
before we know it.
Yeah, that's it. All right. I'll catch you.
See you guys.
Bye.